Yes, everyone, and welcome to Greek Talk, the premier video podcast for Greek genealogy enthusiasts. Greek Talk is hosted by Gregory Kontos, founder of Greek Ancestry, and co-hosted by Georgia Stryker-Kaleman of Hellenic Genealogy Geek and Karaklis Petranik of Spartan Roots. We are kicking off today's episode with something that might interest you guys. Last week I gave a webinar for the Legacy Family Tree webinar marathon. The presentation was about common challenges in Greek genealogy research and is now available on the Legacy Family Tree webinar library and will be accessible for free until the 22nd of April. Today we will be discussing how we can use the free versions of various artificial intelligence applications that can help with your Greek family history projects. What is AI? Artificial intelligence. It enables computers to simulate human intelligence and problem solving. Three of the most popular programs are ChatGPT, Claude, and Microsoft Copilot. These work kind of like super smart talking robots that learn from lots and lots of text. They are trained on all sorts of things people write, like books, websites, blogs, conversations. When you ask them a question, they try to figure out what you mean by looking at patterns in the words you use. Then they respond based on what's learned. So the more they learn, the better they get understanding and chatting with people. This is an exciting time as these programs have just been publicly released, and they are learning and improving on a daily basis. Genealogy websites such as MyHeritage, Ancestry, and Family Search each have their own AI programs and use them for record hints, smart matches, biographies, photo enhancements, etc. Quite frankly, for my own research, I have used AI software only indirectly through the smart matching record software that is available on genealogy websites such as MyHeritage, Ancestry, and Family Search. And I have also used the photo enhancement and colorization tools available on MyHeritage with success, but that's it pretty much. I know that Georgia and Carol have used it way more than me. So Georgia, please tell us, how did you start using AI?
Well, last year, mid-year, sometime I just started fooling around with it. And I guess the first time that I really delved into it was Carol and I were talking about an article she was going to be writing and that she needed to do some research on it. And I thought to myself after we hung up, I wonder if I could use Chat GPT to do this research. So let's say I can't even remember what the article was about, but let's say it was about the Greek diaspora in England. And so I just put something in there. I said, write 700 words because I wanted it to be expansive about the Greek diaspora in England and include sources. So it came back and I thought, oh, this is great. I saved it. I then told it to regenerate. There's a little button at the bottom, and it regenerated a whole new article. And then I thought, okay, let's delve a little deeper. Let's do 700 words on the Greek Orthodox communities in England. And I did a couple of those. And then let's go into the Greek organizations in England. So I saved all these and I sent them to Carol, which gave her a basis for research. Now, if you weren't going to do that, what you would do is sit on Google and do a search, and you come up with all this stuff that you've got to weed through to see if you can come up. I know they say that you shouldn't use Chat GPT for research, but we're not writing a scientific paper here. So this is about getting ideas and coming up with where to go for information. So that worked out really well, didn't it, Carol?
Oh, it was fabulous. And we've been playing with it ever since. We've even been uploading chapters of books in Greek and translating them, but we're going to talk about that later. George is going to go into that.
Actually, I'm going to talk about it right now.
Okay.
Carol and when Carol came back from Greece last year, she brought back some books, and one of them was something that we both were very interested in. And we thought, oh, let's translate this. Okay, so This is before we were involved with ChatGPT, really. And so we were doing it on a manual basis. We would take, Carol had taken she had digitized the book. We turned it into a Word document. Then we would upload that into, let's say, DeepL, and then Google Translate. And then kind of rearrange, you had to rearrange the sentences because they weren't coherent. They would translate word for word. So from Greek into English. So Carol, after months of us struggling, not really getting anywhere because we got frustrated, we just put it aside. Carol said, why don't we use ChatGPT? I had never even thought about that. And we did. And within one day, between the two of us, we had done the entire book. And it was in a very readable format. Now, we weren't publishing it, okay? We didn't go in and look at every single word, but in general, it was a very good translation. And I would recommend it. If you have a village history book that you've been sitting on for a while because it's in Greek and you can't get through it, which I have, it is an amazing thing. You can get it done very quickly, and I would definitely recommend it. The other thing is that I started using AI as an idea, like to supplement, let's say, a family history, your family history writing or something. So I was just experimenting with it, and here's the prompt that I put in. I used ChatGPT for this one, and I asked it to write a story about a 10-year-old Greek immigrant in early 1900s who came to Chicago and worked as a shoe shine boy. Oh, it did a great job. It wrote a story, but they had the Greek immigrant boy working for an Irish shoe shine parlor. And it changed like the whole content of the story. So then I went back in and I said, no, make it a Greek. You have to remember, you're dealing with a computer. It's only going to do what you tell it to do. And it's a thought process you have to get used to. And I'm not used to it quite yet. I do multiple things multiple times. And it came back and it wrote a great story. So I think that it has a lot of potential. It's not perfect, especially now. It's still the beginning. It's not perfect, but it's really good. It's a good tool to use. Now, Carol has been playing around with it to see how it extracts and summarizes text for some of our records. So Carol, why don't you go into some of that?
Sure. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I also have a couple of slides because I want you to see what I put in and what the output is. But as George has said, there's a couple things that we need to keep in mind. First of all, this is a language tool. It's trained to work with language. And the way it's been trained is that there's millions and millions and millions of pages and documents and newspapers and books that it's been fed. So it has learned how we talk, how we write, and how we think. So it works on a predictive text basis. And if you use like Gmail and Google and you start typing something like, would you like to come to, and then all of a sudden you see a couple of words like my party or my house that just pops up, that's how AI is working. That's how it's trained to look at language. And one thing that we've been watching in these videos, the professionals are talking about a term called hallucination, which just absolutely cracks me up, because when you hallucinate, you're seeing things or imagining things that aren't real. They're not there. And so sometimes what people find is if they ask the chat box to write something like Georgia did. Okay, she asked for a story of a Greek shoe shine boy, and it just started hallucinating that he was working for an Irishman. Well, she never said anything about an Irishman, but it just went out and made this up. So ChatGPT will make stuff up. And when it does, it's called hallucination. So what we need to learn to do is give it very specific instructions in the prompt as to what we want it to do when we feed it certain types of information. So let me give you an example. I'm going to share my screen. And let me make sure I share the right one. Okay, great.
And explain that these slides will be attached to the YouTube video as a link afterwards, because we don't expect you to read through all this.
Yeah, no, we're not going to have you read through these. Okay. And I'm only showing you these for examples. I am not going into detail on these, but here's the prompt in yellow. Extract names and vital data from the World War II draft registration card. This is my grandfather's. So I uploaded it in Claude because Claude will accept images. ChatGPT will not. We're talking the free versions here.
Yeah,
so
free.
This is what Claude came up with. I uploaded, you can upload a JPEG or a PDF. And this is the World War II draft registration card, and it extracted the information from my grandfather. Within seconds, as soon as you put it up, you see the words being typed on the screen in front of you. So that's pretty amazing.
Wait, go back, Carol. So why would I want to do this?
Because then I copy and paste this information and put it in my genealogy software.
Right. Instead of typing everything out, which is a real pain.
Right.
This is a great.
Correct. But I still have to verify that the information in here is correct. And also, when you look at this card, you see that it's handwritten. It's not typed. And it still did a 100% excellent job in transcribing the information. So whenever we do anything, we always have to double check the transcription to make sure it's correct. It will summarize information. So the first slide I showed you, it extracted information. It's always, it will extract on any type of form or document. So I'm going to show you a couple of different things. Here I told it to extract names from this obituary. This is my uncle. This was in a PDF format. I uploaded it to ChatGPT. And the prompt was extract names from this obituary, give the relationships to the deceased, and put the information into a table. And as soon as I uploaded the PDF, boom, on the left-hand side, you see the names that are in the obituary and their relationship to Peter Cannell. So
well, I got to tell you, I think this is very helpful, because I can't tell you the number of times I have spent, you're staring at an obituary, and underneath they have, this one's the grandchild of this is the child of that, blah, blah, blah. And you have to try to link who is what and where do they belong in your tree. And I think this is really helpful. I will use this.
it is. And if you look at the very last name, Lena, it says it's his daughter-in-law, his stepson's wife. Now, Georgia and I probably would be calling each other on the phone to try to figure out, when we're looking at this obituary, who is Lena and how exactly is she related? But ChatGPT pulled this right out. So very helpful. And again, verify that all the names are correct and copy the information, put it in your genealogy software. Okay, Georgia, you're going to talk about this one because this is your article. This is fascinating.
Well, there's a story in my family about my great grandfather who was in the United States very early, probably in the 1890s, early 1900s. He came back and forth from Greece, and he would do a lot of odd jobs, anything to make money. And one of them was that the story, I'm telling you, it's a story, there's no way to confirm it, is that he went to somewhere in South America for one of these Greek organizations to harvest bananas. Now, when he was there, he was shot in the leg, supposedly by a native with a bow and arrow, and that's why he limped for the rest of his life. Now, okay, so there's the story. So I was always wondering about this whole banana trade and what was going on during that time frame. So I found this article, which is on the left, from the Chicago Tribune from 1890. Well, if you've ever read articles from that time frame, they are filled with fluff. Very dramatic, filled with fluff, blah, blah, blah. So this is a very long article, as you can see. So I went in and I gave it a prompt that says, summarize the attached newspaper article highlighting how the Greek banana business was impacted. And the first time I went in, I didn't tell it Greek. Okay. And so it came back with a bunch of dot points that never even mentioned Greek. So I had to go back in and change the prompt. And this is what the response was. It told me all about the fast train service and how it dramatically had impact on the Greek banana trade. Talks about the Greek community in New Orleans. It's very good the way they put this together. It kind of summarized the whole article in a little paragraph. And we used Claude AI to summarize this.
Mhm.
So
Wonderful.
I was very happy with this. I think this is a good tool also.
Yeah, that is a long article and there's a lot to pull out of there, but wonderful. Okay, so moving on, another thing that we found it will do very nicely is create a genealogy research plan. So the prompt was create a genealogy research plan for Ioannis Kostakos. This is the only information I gave it. He was born in Sparta, immigrated to the US in 1899. He was a restaurant owner. He died in 1954 in New York. That was all I put in the chat box. And look what it came back with. It came back with a full research plan from where to look for records in Greece, what type of records to look for in the US, and why I should look for those records. So, and this was in ChatGPT. Fabulous job. If you feel like you're stuck and you're spinning wheels, put just the basic information in one of these chat boxes and ask it to create a research plan, genealogy research plan, and see what it gives you. The other
I really like that because for me, it's like a checkbox. When you're looking at doing research, we've got a million different things going on. You've looked at a million different places. And this gives you an outline so you can check, okay, I already looked at newspaper archives. I already searched the census records. Oh, you know what? I forgot to look at this other thing. So I really think this is a good idea too.
It is. So far, we've just been finding that it's amazing how this will help you and prompt you along in your work. Now, once you pretty well have a skeleton outline for an ancestor, you can you can give it a prompt to create a timeline for that ancestor. And what you do is just take whatever, excuse me, whatever notes you have in whatever format they are, throw it in the chat box and say create a timeline for the person, and it will generate different types of timelines. The first one it did was just very skeleton, and I went back, and as Georgia mentioned, there's a regeneration button. I just clicked regenerate and boom, it came up with this one. That I like this format, and I like the fact that it had a little more information than just the skeleton one. Again, this is great if you're doing a family history, if you have something that you want a timeline for, and timelines are very helpful in research. Throw your notes in and have it create one. Any thoughts before I go on to the next one, Georgia?
No.
No? Okay. So the
Can't believe
last
it came.
one I want to talk about is and I love this too. This is the MyHeritage AI biography. And if you take a look at this, if you have a MyHeritage account or an Ancestry or Family Search account, and you ask it to create a biography within that website, it will take the photos and the vital information about that person and give you what is called a biography, which is that short paragraph right next to the photos. If you go back and say include historical context, it will take that biographical information and interlace it with what was going on in that person's life through his lifespan, major historical events. And the beauty of that is that it's not just the static information about your ancestor. It's helping you understand how your ancestor's life unfolded in the world in which he or she was living in. So this biography is fabulous. Like I said, if you have MyHeritage or Ancestry, it will do it automatically. If you don't, just take your skeleton information, put it up in a chat box, and ask it to create a narrative or a biography. So, Georgia, we talked a little bit about translations earlier. Do you want to talk is there anything else you want to add to that as
Yeah,
we
I want
translate from
people,
Greek to English?
right. I want to caution people that remember you're talking to a computer and you need to be specific. So, for example, I had a list of names from my village history book that I wanted to put in just to see how it did it. And I pasted those names in, and my prompt was translate into English. All right, I really wasn't thinking clearly. I said translate into English. So it did. It switched the names around because the names I gave it had the surnames first. It switched that around. It also changed the names in some cases to reference what the name meant, not translate. Okay. So it came back. I said, oh, well, all right. So I went in and I put in another prompt and I told it to translate exactly what was written. And it came back, it did it, but it came back and gave me a little lesson at the top that said there's a difference between translation and transliteration. And then it went through the detail, which I knew, but you don't think about this when you're talking to this computer, right? I wanted it really to transliterate what was there. And maybe if you had occupations on the list, you'd say transliterate the names, translate the occupations. So it does exactly what you tell it to do, which is interesting. The other thing is that I was excited because Carol had said to me that Family Search was doing some stuff where it was reading handwriting. So out of curiosity, I had a little card that was sent to me from sent to my mom, sent to my grandmother from her niece in Greece back in the 60s. And it was like a little card. It was handwritten pretty well. So I uploaded a picture of it in Greek handwriting, and it came back in seconds with a translation. And I got all excited and I sent Carol a message. Oh my God, it read this
So
Greek card,
excited.
right? And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. The names aren't right. And then I sat down and pulled out the translation that Gregory had done for me 10 years ago. And the content wasn't right either. So now this is what Carol's talking about when she said hallucination. It didn't come back and say, I can't read this. It came back and gave me this other story, all right, which was unbelievable. Then Carol said, which was really funny, she said, why don't you upload one of the marriage documents from MyHeritage that was that Gregory had already translated for you. So I knew the content. So I put a picture up of that. I loaded it up on, I guess it was Chat GPT or Claude. I can't remember. It was Chat GPT, I think. And it came back in seconds with a translation that said, we recognize that there's a seal at the top of this document, which was from the diocese, right? But no, they recognized that as a government seal and translated this marriage document, which originally was the archdiocese giving permission for the village priest to do the ceremony. Instead, they came back and said, there was a meeting in England that needed to be canceled because of severe illness. That was basis of this whole thing. And I was like, what the heck? Where did that come from? It doesn't even make any sense. Okay. So you have to be very careful. I got excited. I'm sure that within the next year, it will be able to read some of these Greek things.
Sure.
But it just hasn't learned yet. And I don't like the fact that it doesn't come back and say, I can't read it. It comes back and gives you some bogus thing, because what it's doing is taking all the information it has and, like Carol said, putting it together and coming up with what they think it's supposed to say. So that was kind of a very strange
Yeah.
experience.
It does make things up, and I have used it. I have tried to use ChatGPT for translation. I haven't asked it to read a document. I, give it the text in Greek, but like in the old version of the language in Katharevousa, and
Yeah, I know.
it does translate the Katharevousa. It doesn't say, as you say, it doesn't say I can't do it. It makes an effort, but it it cannot understand some words. It doesn't know some words, but it also changes the style of the language, and it cannot get all the nuances that a professional translator can, highlight. So using Greek like for the Greek language, it hasn't been trained enough to
Correct.
produce a very reliable product.
So what we need to do is use it and teach it.
Yeah, keep feeding it.
Yeah, and Georgia and I are dangerous in our language because we know enough that we could not do the translation ourselves, but we know enough that when we read the translation, it's off. It's not right. So we would caution, if people who are going to watch this decide that they're going to start uploading stuff and they don't know Greek at all, do not trust it. You have to get somebody who knows the language to do the comparison to see if it's even close to being correct. So be careful.
Well, I think that I've used it now on my grandfather's village history book, which was written in the probably 1970s. So it's recent writing. Um, and it was done by an educated person, and it wasn't real flowery. It's doing a really good job on that, except for certain terminology. So it couldn't understand the word that he had put in, which he meant was smallpox. It kept coming up with some other term. So I knew enough to read this, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I had to do some research to translate it better. I think that you have to remember it's changing the format of what it's writing. It doesn't translate word for word like Google Translate does. It
Which
translates.
also, yeah,
There's a good part and a bad part of that.
right.
When Google used to translate, it translates word for word, which makes it sometimes almost illegible when you're talking about the way Greek is written versus the English language. This takes and puts it into more of a context where it makes sense.
Right.
But you do have to double check. You do have to read everything to see.
Yeah. I've noticed that it does a better job when you provide it with shorter texts compared to large ones. So if you have let's say, 1-page document and you wanted to translate it, it's better to have it do it paragraph by paragraph instead of fitting it with the whole thing. But another con is when you use it for historical context, like the example that Carol gave us earlier about the AI, the MyHeritage AI biography. It gives you the big picture. So yeah, World War I. Okay, but it doesn't know that Greece joined World War I in 1917. So that's 1 year after the marriage. Or that World War I did not affect Greece the way it affected the Central European countries. Or it didn't mention the Asia Minor campaign at all. So there is still room, of course, for it to learn, but we also need to be cautious not to over rely on it. and think that whatever it says, take it for granted.
Yeah,
Yes, it's a
definitely.
tool, like any other tool,
It's a
right?
tool.
We have to learn how to use it, and we have to be in control.
I have to say I've been experimenting with the images.
Hmm.
It's definitely not up to par. Let me tell you. I um put in a thing where I said create an image of a Greek fruit and vegetable peddler in 1910 Chicago. Include his cart and horse. Okay, so it came up, gave me a couple. I think I did this on Claude. Came up, gave me a couple pictures. The problem is, it's just a conglomeration of pictures that it's taken from the web, right? So it takes pieces. So you'll get a horse with 5 legs, got one horse without a head. I got a one wagon without wheels. I mean, the whole thing is, and in the background was a picture of Chicago in 1910. So it just plops all this stuff together. I did another one about the great grandfather that went to pick bananas, gave it a prompt. It came back and gave me a guy that could have been Greek around some plants that could have been banana plants. But what it took was a bunch of bananas like you bought at the grocery store and plopped them in the picture all around. You know, it does censor what you're doing, because what I did was say that this native had shot my grandfather with a bow and arrow, and I wanted the picture of this together. I think Chat GPT told me it couldn't do it, and Claude refused to put those pictures together. It gave me a native in one picture and the Greek man in another picture. So the word shot in there, they totally edited what I had put in.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's a learning experience, but it's
Yeah.
it can be a good tool, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I've used a little bit of colorization tools on my heritage. It does a good job. In some cases, you can tell that you know, it's not the
Right.
original, right? But there is definitely lots of. I mean, this has just started. ChatGPT hasn't been around for a year or so. There's still way to go. I think it's time to close this episode. There are many questions in the chat. We will add links to resources at the end of this video podcast in the YouTube video description, so you will be able to access everything through those links. And if there are many questions and great interest, we'll do a second episode on AI. So thank
It
you
would be
everyone
it
for
would be fun maybe to do it in 6 months and see what's improved and
right.
what's changed a
That's
few
a good
months from
idea.
now versus
That's a good
now.
idea.
Okay, well, this was fun, and I hope everybody has a good time. Go and play, but just watch some of those resources that are in the links, because Georgia and I have gone through each of those, and we can tell you that we've learned a lot from them.
Yes, everyone, and thank you for attending.
Thank you.